I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're exploring a compelling collection that delves into the heart of the Mid-Ohio Valley. The name of the book, Town and Country, Voices from the Mid-Ohio Valley. It is written by a wonderful author. His name is Carl Parsons, and in the book, he presents 10 diverse stories, each portraying ordinary individuals confronting extraordinary challenges. This is a wonderful anthology that offers a profound look into the human condition within small-town America. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by buying his wonderful book and by subscribing to our TV channel, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Carl, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Logan.
Well,
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, it's a great opportunity to have you on the show and talk about your wonderful work. You seem to be an expert on the Mid-Ohio Valley region. Tell us a little bit about your love for this part of the country.
Well, I grew up there, and the town that's represented as Parkston in the stories is actually Parkersburg, West Virginia, based on Parkersburg. And the rural areas around it, the country part of Town and Country, is a combination of Lubeck, Washington, the New England Ridge, West Virginia. So it's the rural section of Wood County that's just to the southwest of Parkersburg. So yes, I grew up there and didn't leave the area until I went to college at West Virginia University in Morgantown.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country, spectacular landscapes, beautiful little towns. It really can capture your heart, and I can see why you've devoted your time to writing this wonderful collection. How much of it is based on your actual experience, these stories that you tell?
Well, some of it is very much based on it. The story about the postmistress, for example, that postmistress is based on my Aunt Vivian, who really was the postmistress in rural part of West Virginia, New England Ridge, West Virginia. And I think anybody who knew her will recognize that voice in that story. Some of the general store in the story, Penny Candy, that's a real general store. And I used to catch the bus to go to, the school bus to go to high school at that store.
Amazing, amazing. I used to love little general stores like that. I'd get some candy, I'd get some soda. Whenever I could scrounge together the nickels and dimes and whatever we needed to buy them at that time to look at the comic book stand. In my candy store, there was a comic book stand, and I'd look at all the DC comics. It really transports you back when you read your stories to a simpler time and in many ways, a better time, right?
Exactly so. And unfortunately, though, there's a theme that runs through these stories is the beginnings of an economic decline in the area as it starts to fall into the Rust Belt category. And unfortunately, you know, the Mid-Ohio Valley is where Appalachia meets the Midwest. And beginning in about the mid 1960s, it started to go into decline and hasn't really come out of it yet. But there used to be a rich diversity of industry in Parkersburg, for example, as well as in other towns up and down the Mid-Ohio Valley. But most of that's all gone now.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunately Parkersburg became better known as a scene of one of the worst industrial pollution cases in history that involved the DuPont company. And it was featured in the movie Dark Waters.
Yeah, so much of small town America is disappearing. Main streets are disappearing, mom and pop shops are disappearing. So much of our commerce today is done online. That people don't actually get to know the postmistress, get to know Jake, the guy who runs the candy store, which is the guy who ran my candy store. But a lot is lost when you don't have these colorful characters and these great locales and this small town fabric of America.
Yeah, it bothered me that that Parkersburg had become known as a scene for this industrial pollution problem. And so that's one of the things that motivated me to prepare this collection of stories. I mean, each of the stories has its own inspiration, but for the collection itself, I wanted to present it as kind of a counterpoint to that problem of industrial pollution, and also as a bit of a counterpoint to J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah.
Not as a contradiction of that, because what he says is very true, but his message seemed to be leave, get out. And what about the people who can't do that or who don't want to do that? So I wanted to tell their story too.
Yeah. Well, you've done that and you've done a wonderful job. Of all the stories, and I know it's like picking amongst children, do you have a favorite?
Yes, the story about the hermits of Locust Hill, where these two brothers go to find a fishing hole, um, and encounter these. Well, they know that they exist there. These two hermits, and it's a wonderful story about the importance of a big brother. And I think anyone who reads that, who's had a big brother, will really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these stories would be wonderful short films, perhaps expanded more to be full
They
feature-length
would.
films.
Yeah.
Have you envisioned that at all?
Well, I think the story Wind and Rain that ends the town section is, I had that in mind actually as I wrote that story. I think that one would make a wonderful film. Um, Penny Candy perhaps would also, that ends the country section, but I think Wind and Rain would would fit that bill better. I always try to use dialogue in my stories to a
Mm,
great extent,
yeah.
and that by itself lends itself to being turned into a screenplay.
Absolutely. You never know whose hands this book is going to wind up in, and hopefully you get that call from Hollywood and it happens. That would be great. Wind and Rain, give us an overview of that story.
Well, Wind and Rain is a story about a young boy who becomes a bluegrass guitarist, quite
Mhm.
a virtuoso, and he has a very kind, wonderful uncle who trains him to do that. And the uncle has a small local bluegrass group that performs in different places, and the boy becomes very popular. In fact, he gets a contract, goes to Nashville, makes recordings, and he's doing very, very well. But it sort of goes to his head also,
Mm.
and it starts to harm his family. And there's a wonderful reconciliation scene with his wife that is the climactic point in the story. And he finally settles down, becomes an electrician, an electrical repair person, opens his own shop back in his own neighborhood, and sort of doesn't give up bluegrass. He still performs, but he just does it on a local basis the way his uncle did.
Gotcha. So he's come full circle. He realized the importance of family, and the importance of family and family dynamics is a theme throughout your stories.
It
Tell us a
is.
little bit about that.
Well, obviously, it's if you don't have that, you don't have a properly functioning society.
Mhm.
And we've seen, unfortunately, in recent times, a lot of forces that try to tear the family apart, sometimes deliberately. And it's good to look back at a time in which that wasn't true, in which a person would even, in the case of Wind and Rain, give up success in favor of family.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen so often now.
Yeah, absolutely. Success, as it's called, often comes first. And it's a tragedy because Jim Carrey, the comedian, says, I wish everybody could be rich and famous to realize that's not the answer.
There
And
you go.
I think that's a great quote because when it all comes down to it, it's the relationships in our lives and how strong they are that define our lives. Talk to us a little bit about Penny Candy. I love that story. I think the folks at home would enjoy hearing about it.
Yeah, Penny Candy is a story that focuses on the owners, the Crandalls, who own this general store in this rural area. As I said, it's based on a real general store that I knew very, very well. and it's so close to their home, they just walk to it. And they have the cats. The cats, by the way, were real also.
Yeah.
And the cats did sleep in the window of the general store, just
Yeah.
as they do in the story. And the Royal Crown Cola bench that's in front of the store was in front of that real store as well. So at any rate, a convenience store has opened up in their neighborhood, and it threatens them economically. And over the years, they have had to concede certain parts of their business to a farmer's co-op, for example, that sells seed, which they used to do. Now this convenience store opens up, and that's taken away a part of their business. So they're really concerned that that they're going to have to close up, and they don't really have anything to fall back on. And also, an important element in the story is the fact that they lost their son in Vietnam. And this has greatly affected the mother. She's unstable mentally because of that. And when other pressures, such as the possible loss of the store, come into play, they bring back those memories. And she has visions of her son. She imagines that she sees him and that he speaks to her. And this happens in the story and creates a crisis for them. So now it's a dual crisis. The husband has to deal with his wife's mental health and also the possible loss of the store. So he consults with his pastor, who's a Scotsman, a Presbyterian pastor, who comes and gives some wonderful advice to the wife, who says to her that these visions that you have of your son, they're actually granted to you by God. They're not something that you should fear. They're something that you should welcome. And this helps her a great deal. Then they also consult a neighbor of theirs who runs the farmers co-op, and he has an idea that can save their store. And he finally presents that to them, in which they will become part of the farmers co-op organization. And so in the end, it's reconciled very well that the store will stay open. It's seen as this sort of a gathering place in the neighborhood that people don't want to give up anyway. And this will give them the possibility of retiring and keeping the store open. So.
Yeah. Wonderful. I wish it worked out for all general stores like that.
There you go.
Because they are such a wonderful part of Americana. And I love the little details in your book, your references to RC Cola, for example. You know you're in the heartland when you're drinking RC and not Coke or Pepsi,
There you go.
Yeah, it's like being down south and having some cheer wine. Kind of speaks to the people of that region. Wonderful. The name of the book is Town and Country, Voices from the Mid-Ohio Valley. Author Carl Parsons presents 10 diverse, unique, compelling stories, each one portraying ordinary people confronting extraordinary challenges. It is a wonderful anthology that offers a profound look into the human condition within small town America, which is my favorite part of America. Carl, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
You're welcome, Logan. Thanks for having me.
I love having you on the show. I appreciate your time, sir, and your insight. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.